Our vehicle was created for 5 basic premise. We call them the musts. High mileage, which we define at 84 miles per gallon. Low cost, which we defined at $6,800. Safe, no new technology, and made in America with 90% North American content. So those 5 things have been on everybody's desk every step through the way. And this is a case of form following function. The result of the value proposition is pretty spectacular, and I get this question a lot. Why hasn't somebody done that before? And I think it splits into 2 groups. There's a big chunk of those folks who are saying it out of admiration, like, wow, I can't believe somebody didn't do that before. And then probably the majority are like, there's no way this is a good idea. It's so simple. If it would have worked, somebody would have done it before, right? And I thought about it a lot, and in the entry of my house, there's the trunk that my grandfather moved from Italy to America with in 1912. So heavy luggage has been around a long time. Wheels even longer. And it wasn't until the mid-'80s that somebody went, if we put wheels on the ends of these heavy rectangles, it sure would be convenient, right? And all of our backs are the better for it. And that's what we did. Elio Motors is wheels on luggage. It's nothing fancy. So I think there's 2 types of innovation or design, and one is a technical breakthrough, the airplane, the light bulb, the computer chip, and some is architectural, and that's what we've done here. So there's no new technology allowed, yet the results are fantastic. For the industrial designers, you're not going to like this part of the story. So I believe that this project was about the value proposition, not about the styling. So I went to our ID folks, and I gave them a book of cars, and I earmarked some that I liked, and I said, you have 2 weeks to do sketches. And they had 5 or 6 they liked, and I picked that one. And I said, you got 2 weeks to turn that into a solid model, and that's the middle one. And 12 weeks later, the first prototype was running at the track. And if you look at the vehicle today, it's very, very close to that initial design. The big guys, like you said, it's very process-driven, and it takes years. And this was about front-to-back seating, right? Because at highway speeds, most of your fuel goes to moving air. We're half as wide, we move half as much air, we get double the mileage. So that was the tenet. Front-to-back seating, 3 wheels, and then everything worked around that. We are doing our own engine, and I've been asked why. Why do your own engine? Because that's a big undertaking. And, necessity is the mother of invention. So when we got started, we didn't have enough credibility to get a commitment for the kind of volume we needed from the big guys. So there really wasn't a choice. But I don't think we could hit our objectives without doing it, right? First of all, the other guys are capitalists, which I applaud, but they would want to make money selling me their engine, and that would make the price go up. The other thing is, even for their own vehicles, they design an engine for multiple platforms, and so it's good for all but best for none. The advantage of designing this engine for this application and none other, to get 84 miles per gallon, 0 to 60 in under 10 seconds, and over 100 miles per hour top speed, we can hit our targets. And so I don't think there was any other way to achieve what we wanted to achieve. The other part of the innovation, I think the thing that we've done different than other potential startups, is committing to a big volume. So we've said we're going to capacitize that for 250,000 units a year. And I've been asked a lot of times, well, what does your business model look like at 10,000? And it's like, well, crappy, because we're not set up for that, right? You can't make these milestones on make a few, sell a few, right? You got to make the commitment. The real story of Elio Motors is these guys. It's the supply base. And I marked the founding of the company, or at least the start of the project. Me and a guy that I know were in a hotel room in Detroit, and he's a manufacturer's rep, and he knew a lot of these guys at high levels. And I said, can you get me meetings at high levels at some of these suppliers? And he agreed to do that. And that's really was the beginning of the journey. And I think that's the key. The average guy on the street can't get those meetings, right? The auto industry, in my view, has a bunch of brilliant people working in a horrible system. And the horrible system was created by brilliant people who made the exact right decision at the time, just times have changed. And a perfect example of that in this area is specifications. So that guy I was referring to, he supplies the lighted cup holder to a particular OEM, and he gave him the first article They did their EMF testing and said, well, it interferes with the ham radio band. You need to redesign it. And he's like, when was the last time somebody put a ham radio in one of your vehicles? you know? And the design engineer says, I don't care. It doesn't meet the spec. Redesign it. So he charged him for the redesign, and he's charging him more for every single part so it meets that spec. And in fairness to that design engineer, he had two choices, right? He could spend the next 90 days of his career rewriting that spec, and if he made a mistake, quite possibly lose his job, or hand the parrot back to Steve and say, the design doesn't meet the spec. So part of how we've achieved our cost goals is I give that speech to every single supplier at the first meeting. And I say, we want to get rid of all of the lighted cup holder specs, right? Anything that has to do with safety or quality, we don't want to loosen a bit. But we want to get rid of all of those. And every one of them sighs with great relief and lists off 4 things off the top of their head that they are forced to do that cost them money and difficulty that the consumer doesn't care about. So proper specification is a key to being able to achieve the targets. The other part is including them in the design process. These suppliers are normally not allowed to talk to each other, right? It's a ping pong ball of information from supplier to the OEM to the other supplier and back and forth. We've designed this vehicle through a series of what we call supplier summits, where we get all the suppliers together and we work on the vehicle as a group for 3 days. And the industry is set up to compartmentalize things so it's commodity, so they can switch from one product to another on a quarter. And when I was a budding engineer at an automotive seating company, I figured out that the seat bracket I was creating, I could save, it was a long time ago, so I'm making up the numbers, but it was like a half a pound and $1 if they would move their bolt hole on their floor pan an inch. I mean, move a hole. I showed the OEM pretty compelling numbers, and they said, no, the hole stays where it's at, make it work. I'm like, well, I can make it work, it's just it costs you more weight and money. But they would not move their hole. And, well, it's to compartmentalize, right? So through this process, sometimes the answer is, Takata, charge me $2 more for the airbag because I can save $5 on the frame if we go this way. My customer doesn't care what I pay for any given component. They just care what the vehicle costs. And so by having these meetings with everybody involved and making horse trading on the spot, we come up with a solution that optimizes on the entire product instead of the component. The last piece is the actual business relationship. I think that's broken in Detroit. So it's a cost plus model, and we're doing the same thing. But they do cost plus a very small number because they don't want anybody else to make any money. And so the way the process goes is the supplier puts in a bid for something that they can't make money on. They win the contract. They wait for an engineering change. They jack them on the engineering change. They get it up to a number that they can live on. Both sides spend millions of dollars in this negotiation, trying to figure out who's going to make the money. So we're doing cost plus, we're doing it differently. It's cost plus 20% for SG&A and profit. So if their SG&A is in line, they have double-digit margins on Elio and single-digit margins everywhere else. And we get the price right through proper engineering and specification. So we're hitting our cost targets at $6,800 profitably, and insisting that all the suppliers involved make a good margin. Then it came time to, how do we get this from factory to consumer hands? And again, it's a bunch of brilliant people working in an old system. When Henry Ford happened upon the franchise system, the reigning technology of the day was the telegraph, literally. It was 1909. The only way to get data from Detroit to LA was the telegraph. If that's your infrastructure, a franchisee system is absolutely the right choice. With modern logistics, the internet, and jet travel, I don't know that it is anymore. So we're going to do company-owned stores. They're in strip malls. We're only going to build 2 ways, a standard and an automatic. That's it. Every vehicle comes with air conditioning, power windows, power door locks, and a stereo. All of the upscale content you're used to getting, you can still get on your Elio, but we put it on post-manufacture instead of at the factory, right? If you want a leather seat, well, Lear's our supplier. They make millions of those. You can get a power leather seat. If you want the blind spot detecting mirrors that I'm personally addicted to, that's from Continental. They're our supplier. You can get those. So the way the process works is you walk into our retail center, you say, I want the orange automatic with the leather seat and the blind spot detecting mirrors. It goes to 1 of 7 marshaling centers. We close our stores at 9 p.m. We build out vehicles to midnight, so we have 3 hours to clear the system. At midnight, the vehicles go on trucks. With 7 marshaling centers, we're within 9 hours of all of our stores. So theoretically, at 10 a.m. the next day, you get the vehicle exactly the way you wanted it the day before, no matter what time you walked into the store. So now we don't have all this inventory parked all over the country. We have it parked in 7 concentrated areas, and you get a lot more of what you want for less. This is a big part of the reason why we can hit $6,800. I personally have a grudge against the lighted vanity mirror. Those are $20. There's 2 of them in every car. I spent hundreds of dollars on them, and if you don't put makeup on, you don't really care, right? But half the population does, and I have to keep rebuying them and rebuying them. So our visor is just cloth, and if you want the lighted vanity mirror, you can get that. It's $20, and we'll put it on for you. So you get a lot more of what you want, and you spend a lot less money. So I didn't know that Boom or The Design Eats World was the right title for the slide, but can we innovate the way we finance? A big part of the reason we did this is I believe firmly that we could hit the volume targets of 250,000 a year or some arbitrarily large number. And I constantly got pushback for the first 4 years of the project. Like, well, I don't know if people accept front to back seating, if they'll accept 3 wheels, and there was just bickering. And so we thought, well, let's do rewards crowdfunding and prove it. And, like anything, it takes a while to get good at it. And so for the first year, we took 6,000 reservations. In the second year, we took 32,000 reservations. So we're at over 38 now. And in August, our best month, we took 6,300 reservations. And to put that number into perspective, we took more reservations than Scion sold cars, Acura, Infiniti, the entire brands now, Lincoln, Mitsubishi, Fiat, Volvo, and Jaguar. And they all have the distinct advantage that they have a product, and we don't, right? So the volume's there. People want this vehicle. Now, since this has happened, I never have the discussion, can you hit a meaningful volume? We can bicker on what the exact number is, but it's going to be a meaningful volume if we can do this without a vehicle. And the other thing is we spent no money on advertising, right? These folks have spent more on advertising in 2014 than we spent on our entire project. And, oh, by the way, we raised $15 million, which helps us in our business. So what really gets me up in the morning, my passions for this project are the impact of the project more than the product itself. We can reduce total U.S. gas consumption by nearly 0.5% after 5 years of sales. That's a meaningful number. Whether your prime concern is global warming or our trade deficit due to foreign oil, the answer is the same. Use less oil, right? And we can do that better than anybody. We can create thousands of new American jobs. And what isn't immediately obvious is create mobility for the folks who are struggling, right? There's a study out there that says something like 60% of the unemployed have had to turn down a job because they had no way to get to the job. And at 84 miles per gallon and $6,800, they can afford the vehicle. They can get to the job. It matters in people's lives. I don't know who to attribute this quote to. It's certainly not mine. I think it might be Lee Iacocca, but I didn't research it. I stole it. Success has 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan. I think this is why innovation is hard to do in a big company. When something succeeds, the credit is spread around a large group, as it should. It takes hundreds of people to have something of this magnitude happen successfully. If something fails, we want somebody to blame, and we pin it on the one or the few who got that ball rolling, right? So if it goes well, you get a little sliver, and if it goes poorly, you lose your job. And so to take on big projects like that is very difficult inside a big company. And to take on big projects as a small company, well, it takes lots of capital, and it's a very hard thing to do. And getting ready for this, we were talking about how did that happen, and fortunately, I don't think things through. I think is really how it happened. I had an idea. I owned an engineering firm with a couple of guys that had 46-degree engineers doing new product development in automotive, and I went and I kicked it off, and we just started working the problem, one piece at a time. And then once you can pull it off, how can you quit? Because then 2009 hit and everything blew apart. And there's been some hard days from when we kicked this off till now. And but when you know you can reduce total use gas consumption by 0.5%, when you know you can create mobility for those folks who are struggling, when you can create thousands of new American jobs, good paying American jobs, how can you quit? And that's what keeps me going on a daily basis is the project matters and it must happen. That's all I got. Thanks.